And I've got angels on my side. I got angels flying high. And everything
I understand today we're going to be reopening the jet noise issue on Island County, and that there's two motions. When I wrote my pre-buttal, which I hope you all have read, I didn't know of the second motion, but I have to tell you, all of you, very, very straight up, that as someone who kind of has had to become the messenger between the State Board of Health and the Allen County Board of Health, that they did not know that this was going to be on the agenda until I brought it to their attention on 19 July 2017. And ever since, my understanding is Island County Public Health has been in contact with your staff and with some of you. My conversations also with them are that if they are directed to do a health impact assessment, that it's going to take dramatic resources away from basic Island County Public Health to address an issue that, at the end of the day, these people choose to remain at or around the outlying field. I've asked this board and I've asked the State Department of Health to put a building moratorium around outlying field Coopville, and your offices said you can't do that legally. I respect that decision, but I think that now gives you a moral responsibility to seriously consider removing the state health apparatus from this situation and allow the federal EIS process to play out, where and finally, environmental impact statement is going to drop this fall. It is my understanding that citizens of the East Reserve, or CORE, is going to file an appeal, and the federal courts will be starting to work on this issue. And I just think that a health impact assessment would get in the way of that and just add more process and more delay to getting the proper bounces at outlying field Coopville. And this is very personal to me. I'm not able to serve in the military, but I have a lot of friends who do. And my father served at NES Woodby Island, and sometimes he had to guard A6s, so I think it's only right that the son protect outlying field Coopville. And I want to tell you about a young lady who we'll call Christina, and she bought me this patch for Christmas. First time I've ever had a patch with my name on it. And this is her training patch. My friend's life matters. And I really, I wanted to show you her picture, but the phone's messing around and I don't want to waste your time. I respect you being so patient with me this morning after some of those very emotional testimonies that we all heard and certainly impacted all of us. But again, I know some of you, like Board Member Kutz, understand very well that outlying field Coopville is vital to the life and safety of our Navy sailors. And it's really important that the minimal amount of interference occur when we discuss this and allow the federal court process to play out. And as much as I do not like CORE, I think they're disruptive, they have a right to go to the federal courts and sue. And I want to leave you with this thought. Recently, we had a very contentious debate in Island County about having a trail under the flight path in Central Whidbey. Many corps called it, these are their words, extortion and blackmail to, and I'll wrap up, to ask the Island County Public Health Officer to certify there would be no health risk, and for EB's NHR management, which manages most of the land in Central Whidbey, that there would be no jet noise issues. If that's the response of the people who started this process about having an intelligent, mature, respectful, pro-science conversation about this, then I really think this group needs to rethink your involvement. And I want to also say thank you for your public service. I do want to come back before you on a different matter next year, namely how we can use public transit to help improve public health outcomes, but I'm sorry, today is just too contentious.
Next up on the agenda, we are at number 8, and Stuart GLASOE will give us a prelude to the topic.
Hello again, board members. The next business item is follow-up on Island County jet noise issues, which you left as unfinished business in your March meeting in Tumwater. You'll find the cover memo for this agenda item under tab 8. This item needs some background for the discussion, so bear with me as I reset things. You will recall the board doing extensive work in late 2016, early 2017 on Island County noise issues associated with jet training activities at Naval Air Station Whidbey Island. This stemmed from public health concerns raised by local residents and citizen groups and a formal complaint against 2 Island County health officials filed by citizens of EB's Reserve and concerned island citizens claiming the officials failed to carry out their duties to protect public health from noise. At your March meeting, you received 2 briefings. First, you received a briefing from the Department of Health on a literature review of the health effects of noise. In that briefing, the department listed recommendations it made to the Navy in February on its draft environmental impact statement for proposed expansion in airfield operations at the Naval Air Station, including a recommendation to conduct a health impact statement as part of the EIS. Following that briefing, the board passed a motion endorsing the department's recommendations and directing staff to draft a letter to the Navy recommending that it conduct a health impact assessment on the effects of military jet noise on populations near the Naval Air Station. The second briefing was from board staff on their investigation into the complaint against the 2 Island County health officials, alleging failure to carry out their duties. Following that briefing, the board passed a motion finding the health officials did perform their duties, dismissed the complaint without further action, and directed staff to draft letters to the parties informing them of the board's determination. While considering a third and final motion on the jet noise issues, the board lost its phone connection with a member, I think it was Dr. Pendergrass, and thereby lost a quorum to complete its work and take action on the final motion you were considering at that time. Today's discussion picks up where the board's work left off in March. The cover memo puts back in that I sent to you, that's in your packet. The cover memo puts back in front of you the motion you were considering at that time. The memo also provides an alternate version for your consideration, a simpler version developed by staff at the request of the board's Environmental Health Committee when it met in mid-July. Before proceeding to your discussion of these issues, I guess I'll mention 2 other updates. First, Michelle mentioned earlier that we submitted a letter yesterday, and that was a comment deadline, under the chair's signature, restating your recommendation that the Navy conduct a health impact assessment as part of the EIS. The Department of Ecology is conducting a review of the proposed airfield expansion to determine consistency with the Coastal Zone Management Act and enforceable policies of several laws that are nested under the state's CZM program, including the State Environmental Policy Act. We'll circulate that letter to you following today's meeting. And then the second update really is a little bit of a non-update. Following the meeting with the Environmental Health Committee, I called naval staff in Norfolk, Virginia to see if any public information is available on the status of the EIS and their plans to conduct a health impact assessment, and I did not receive a call back. So that ends my remarks here in trying to reset the stage for your discussion and consideration of this third and final motion.
All right, thank you, Stuart. So in front of the board, as Stuart mentioned, we have the motion that was under consideration in March that we did not get to. We have a revised motion to consider based on committee work. And I suppose the other option would be to take no action at all on the third. So at this point, I guess, what's the pleasure of the board?
Jim. I'd like to make the motion, actually, at this point. If and when the Navy conducts a health impact assessment on military jet noise exposure, the board recommends the Island County Board of Health and Island County health officials monitor the project and coordinate with the Navy as resources allow. The board directs staff to follow up with the Island County Board of Health on the State Board of Health's actions on this matter and to continue monitoring the issues.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion.
I'm going to speak in favor of the new motion. I think the new motion is more accurate. I was distressed in the first effort to learn that neither our jurisdiction or the Department of Health's jurisdiction includes the ability to change aviation in any way, that those are all federal activities. And I do believe that we need to have our federal representatives and senators advise that this is an issue. However, I also want to admit that I am very much in favor of our military, particularly the Navy, have pilots that are trained and skilled in being able to land on aircraft carriers in times of adversity, which we may or may not be approaching as we speak. So I think there's an absolute need for training. I think there's an absolute need for engagement of the federal legislature and or the Department of Defense in what are we doing with these things where we placed a field 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, and lo and behold, more people occupy the land, and how are we going to do with it? So I believe that this particular motion places the responsibility where it belongs with the Navy, and it recognizes that the Island County Board of Health and health officials have a monitoring function that is not necessarily doing all the work.
Other comments?
I agree. Given the jurisdictional issues, it makes sense to follow the lead of the Navy. And I do like the component of the motion that we're considering that requires us to continue monitoring these issues.
This is Fran Besserman. The committee, I just wanted everyone to know that the committee met with extensive discussion led by Stuart on this issue. And as much as we just feel that this is the right avenue to take.
Yeah, this is Steve Kutz. I want to point out that the Island County Board of Commissioners and Island County Board of Health have it within their power to address some of these issues if they so choose to do that. And their decisions to allow building to occur around aircraft have contributed to this. And so I'm not going to let them off the hook for that. And if they continue to allow building to occur in these areas around this, they're the ones that are going to have to figure it out. So having said that, thank you.
Any other comments? Yeah, I would just add I agree with everything that's been said. This was a really challenging topic for the board. Again, we learned a lot, I think, through the process. As has been said very clearly, I too agree that our armed forces need the training to safely carry out their missions. That's imperative. But I also, heard quite clearly from the Department of Health and their review of the literature that they presented to us that while they couldn't differentiate and target military aircraft, it was clear that there can be health impacts to aircraft noise, and not only for the protection of the Island County citizens, but also the Navy personnel stationed there. I think enough in combination with the fact that the Navy's looking to expand the number of flights that they want to run there through Naval Air Station Whidbey Island. To me, it seems logical that a health impact assessment should be conducted by the Navy to protect their own people as well as their neighbors, the Island County citizens. And this motion doesn't stop or asks the Navy to stop. It just asks them to consider the health effects to those surrounding the airfield. So I too feel comfortable with this motion.
So this is Diana Yu. I'm going to ask the same question I asked a couple of months ago, and that is, what is Plan B? Because the Navy can choose not to do anything. And unfortunately, after looking at this issue more and more, I'm not sure that there is a Plan B because it really does solely land on the Department of Defense to study and understand the impact of what they're doing. It's such a balancing act. It's very, very difficult. And as with all public health issues, it's shades of gray. Nothing is in black and white. So it's a very, very difficult balance. But I think it does go back to instead of saying we're not going to hear about this, we're not going to talk about it, is to actually look at what the Island County Board of their leaders, what they can do about zoning. And it may be a little bit too late for folks that have already built and live in the area around the airfields. But I empathize. I don't know what other solution there may be. I think we have discussed this quite a bit, and we really understand where the concerns are coming from both ends, but we do need the pilots to know how to land their airplanes in the dark on an aircraft carrier in the middle of an ocean. We need them to be able to do that. And we need for the citizens of Coupeville to have the quality of life. The question is how to achieve that. And it's really not within our jurisdiction to make those changes happen. And it's not that we don't care. We do care, but it's not within our power to make the changes happen.
So I'm going to disagree. This is Tom Pendergrass again. Donnie, I think there is a Plan B and C. The Plan B and C are not health regulation, but growth management. And what do we do with growth management? And engaging the representative and senators who represent Island County to work with the Department of Defense to move this up in their priority. I certainly admit that there is noise and it is disruptive. Absolutely agree. But from a policy and regulatory point of view, this motion says what we can do, and candidly it says the limits of what the Island County Board of Health and their officers can do, and it then falls to other agencies within Island County commissioners, city planners, to deal with what are we going to do about this pre-existing field and where we go. We certainly know that King County has dealt with these issues. They bought a whole bunch of houses on the approaches to SeaTac, and they moved folks out, and it was painful and difficult, but it can be done. But it is much more than just a health issue. So again, I support the motion as entered.
Any further comment? All right, we'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Thank you, Angel. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, members.